me set the scene. It's Paris. It's 1928, and it's an oil portrait called Queen of Hearts. The model for this sitting, she's chosen a short skirt as pink as a bougainvillea, and from her ear hangs a large pearl, almost as luminous as the one worn by the girl in the famous painting by Vermeer. But it's her eyes I always return to. Big, dark, mysterious eyes cast in the direction of something just outside the frame. What is she looking at? The past? The future? Are her eyes full of joy, mischief, fear? Or is she looking at something we can't see? Her name was Lily Alba, and she was the inspiration for my first book and the recent film, The Danish Girl. When she sat for this portrait, she was at a crossroads. After many years of internal struggle, she had finally come to understand who she really was. Assigned male at birth and given the name Einar Wegener, she finally could look into the mirror or into portraits like Queen of Hearts and see her true self. But she was a transgender woman decades before the word transgender existed. At that time, she had no resources to turn to, virtually no information to look up, no organizations to seek help from, no representation in the media, and no one in the medical establishment willing or able to help her. And yet, Lily continued to search. And fortunately, she was not alone on that journey. In fact, the painter who painted Queen of Hearts was her biggest champion, her wife, Gerda Wegener. It was Gerda's love and support that played a crucial role in Lily's transition, and so did Gerda's art. I first came across the story of Lily almost 20 years ago, deep inside a book about gender and identity and, of all things, literary theory. It was just a brief mention, just a couple paragraphs long, and it said that Lily had been the first person to have what we now call gender reassignment surgery. I had always thought Christine Jorgensen, an American in the 1950s, had been the first, and so I wanted to know who was Lily Alba, and why had she been forgotten, or mostly forgotten, from history. This was so long ago, it was before Google, and I did what writers used to do. I went to the library, and I looked her up, and I began to learn about her remarkable life as a transgender pioneer, and about her extraordinary marriage to Gerda, and the role that art and painting had played in their story. And I remember thinking, wow, that would make a great book. And then, almost simultaneously, I had a second thought, and this was it. I thought, I can't write that book. I was a young writer, burdened by self-doubt, insecurity, anxieties, and I let my fears talk me out of writing about Lily Alba. And 6 months went by, but I kept thinking about her, and I kept thinking about her courage. And then one day, I had a vision of myself a couple years in the future. And in this vision, it was Sunday morning, and I got up, I went to the front door, and I picked up the Sunday New York Times, and I opened up the book review. And in that book review, was a review of a book about Lily Alba written by someone else. And in that vision, I experienced a future emotion. I felt my future regret. Regret not so much that someone else had written about her, but that I hadn't even tried. And so I saved a little money, and I saved some of my vacation time, and I bought a plane ticket to Copenhagen. When I told my boss I was spending my 2 weeks there, he asked, "Why Denmark?" And I said, "I'm looking for a friend." When I got to Copenhagen, the first place I went was the Royal Academy of Arts. This was the art school where Lily, when she lived designer, had studied, where she met Gerda, where they fell in love, where they became artists, and where they began their journeys together. I wanted to be where they had been. I wanted to walk the halls they had walked. I wanted to climb the stairs they had climbed. I wanted to sit in the classrooms they had studied in. I wanted to stand in the studios where they had painted. I wanted to stand beside the window and see how the light fell where they had worked. But it was also here that I first saw many of the images of the Lily paintings, paintings by Gerda of Lily that showed her as she really was and how she wanted to be perceived. So I have another painting of Lily. Lacey, can you go to the next one? There she is. This is one of my favorites. And if you think about it, think about Gerda standing at her easel, looking at her spouse for hours or for days or for weeks. And think of the compassion and the love and acceptance it would require for her to paint the person she had married as she saw herself. And on the other side of it, think of Lily. Think of how brave she was, how much honesty it required to be naked before her wife and expose herself and say, "This is me." There she is. There's a scene in the film in a Paris art gallery. And Gerda, played by Alicia Vikander, is showing a new batch of these Lily paintings. And they're a sensation. Everybody wants to know, who is the model? Where is the model? Who is Lily? Is she here? And Lily is there, except no one can see her. She's in disguise. She's dressed designer. And Eddie Redmayne, playing Lily, is wearing a high starched collar and a tight necktie. It feels almost like it's strangling her. And on Lily's face flickers a desperation. She wants to be seen. She wants to be known. She wants to say, "I'm here. The woman in the portrait, that's me. Lily. That is me." 2 years after Lily sat for Queen of Hearts, she traveled to Dresden for a series of experimental surgeries. She knew that failure, there was a high risk of failure, and she understood the risks, but she also knew that she had to do this, and that a false life is no life at all. She wrote in a letter that she was prepared, that she said, even if she succumbed physically, she was reconciled to that, because she will at least have known what it was to live. Last September, I was on my way to Italy to attend the world premiere of The Danish Girl at the Venice Film Festival. And I knew this was going to be a big thing, and it was going to be a red carpet and movie stars and tuxedos and cameras and a lot of hoopla, and very exciting. But I also knew I needed to do something before all of that. I needed to remind myself what this was all about. And so I went to Dresden to visit Lily's grave. It's a simple plot, sunny. There's no headstone, no marker, but the grass above her is just a little bit greener than the lawns around it. And the cemetery master told me that about 10 people come every month to leave a flower or a candle and to pay their respects. And I imagine that number will increase now with the movie, and that through Eddie's remarkable performance, many more people will know about Lily and her legacy, and through Alicia's mesmerizing performance, many more will know about Gerda and her talent and the depth of her love. I sat down on the grass beside Lily's grave, and I tried my best to tell her that all of this was happening because she had dared to be free. Identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be? Who do I want others to see? These are some of the questions that I believe everyone in this room have wrestled with. And who among us hasn't questioned the reflection in the mirror? I believe that our self-doubts and our anxieties and our securities, they're really about identity. And when we conquer them and we overcome our fears, we are that much closer to being free. Almost 100 years ago, a Danish woman, although she insisted on calling herself a girl, put her foot up on a chair and posed for a portrait called Queen of Hearts. Her props were a deck of cards and a cigarette. And in the portrait, she shows us who she really is. In the portrait, she shows us her best card, the Queen of Hearts. In the portrait, she shows us her best self, a woman named Lily. And in that portrait, she shows us what it means to step forward and tell the world, this is me. Thank you very much.